You can share those with the team, and we can get those escalated up the chain to get those resolved, preferably within the same sprint cycle. So that way the tasks are completed in the correct sprint cycle. But it helps you knowing why there may have been the delay when you go to look at the retrospective during the sprint planning meeting. So if you're waiting on the customer, if you've sent the request to the customer and you're waiting on their response, you say, okay, in order to meet our sprint cycle, we have to have that within 24 hours, and it takes them 4 days to get back to you. You have that documented, and you know what's going on. Why was there a slippage? You can, again, show that on burn down charts.
Who typically attends these meetings? Is it everybody?
It is just the project team.
Okay.
So it should be just individuals working tasks. And the other nice thing, Dick, when we were at the BMC Exchange earlier in February, they had a great speaker come in, and he was talking about how emotional connections are made at various group levels. And your project team is that way. So when you're standing up in front of your project team, you have an emotional buy-in. This isn't for the company. This isn't for upper management. You're going through this, and you're working as a team to get things done. So it is really nice. You're looking at each other. You're not sitting over there frustrated with one of your teammates saying, oh, they're not doing anything. No, when they stand up there and they tell you, explain what you're doing, that helps to join the team and bring the team and a little more close-knit.
Right. Well,
at least has been my experience.
Well, typically when we see delays, it's because the customer system's not ready, or the server's not up yet, or we can't get to a key person that's a decision maker about a certain decision point that we have.
Right.
How does that help? If these people aren't going to be at that meeting, then how does that help at all? Okay.
They could be involved in that. The product team could change and be molded or morphed as the project goes on. And you could start with, and I'm doing it actually right now, where we have the server guys in there. One of the ethics is to build the servers. And the stories underneath of that is that we need a AR server, that we need a mid-tier. And those are then turning into tasks to, set up the server, set up the network, set up, it is a project management style.
Yeah.
And while they have tasks going on, they are a part of our daily stand-ups.
Okay.
Same thing with process folks. They may not always be part of the stand-up for the developers, but they are doing something that feeds in, and they're part of that daily stand-up.
Good. Okay. So that takes us to Conbond. Did I get that right? Okay.
That is right.
All right.
There are a lot of tools out there. You can do it out of the box. Like I mentioned, you can simply have a wall with Post-its on it, and you can see these pretty colors on here lend to that kind of an idea. Or you can use something like Atlassian or the Jira product to automate a lot of that and capture a lot of that and automatically generate these reports for you. The Conbond is just a style of reporting, kind of like a Gantt chart, if you think of it that way, where you can see your timeline on a Gantt chart. This is just a way where on the left-hand side you have your new or your to-do. In this case, they're showing, we need to do an analysis of all the new requirements. So you move it to in process. When it's done with that, you can move it to done, and then it's waiting to be designed. Excuse me. You move that once it hits the design phase, you move that to in process, done, development, in process, done, then to QA. It's very basic. Why make things more complicated than they need to be? You can automatically customize those types of workflows in a product like Atlassian, where as soon as the analysis is done, it dumps in the queue of the design team.
Okay. Yeah, I like it.
So the next thing is that I was going to bring up is just to show you how, yes, you can start very basic. You can start with your Post-it notes. You can start in Excel, where you start to identify different types of epics. You start to develop your stories and your tasks. You can put some additional information about the assignment, the priority of them, dates on when they're starting, issues per item. Or if you look down in the bottom left-hand corner, you can use an application like Jira to display those types of things. And these are just some generic slides or prints.
Okay. So what we have up is a spreadsheet, it looks like, right? And so you just keep track of, that's sort of the old way, okay? And then the new way is you can use, in this case, it's Jira. And Jira is like a Conbond. In other words, you can see everything happening in real time.
And this view is really more showing you from a Scrum Master's perspective of them creating new stories, and they can just simply create an epic, create stories, and start dropping those epics in those stories into the epics, and then or have the task here, and you can then drag and drop your tasks into your sprints. It can capture a lot. It's very automated. It's drag and drop everything to move it around, rather than more of a manual perspective with Excel, where you'd actually have to cut that line, paste it into your sprint tab, from backlog to sprint tab, and when it's done from the sprint tab, or however you may think to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And the next slide is actually more of that Kanban look that you would get from a tool like Jira. The other thing is, remember, you mentioned Confluence earlier. Confluence can be tied directly into Jira, and what that will actually allows you to do is that allows you to document your requirements in a wiki-style engine, and from there you can highlight the requirement and shoot it off and have a task or a story created in Jira. So you can have your documentation and have the work related right to that. And go back and forth between them and see that information.
Okay.
So that's kind of hard to show in PowerPoint. So Dick, did you have any other questions for me, or do we want to maybe open?
Well, let's open it up and thank you, Sam. That was terrific. Why don't we go ahead and open it up for questions right now? And there's a couple of questions that are coming in, or that actually I see a couple in there right now. And so again, now would be a good time. The first question, it says, can you tell me a little bit about, or can you share any insight in terms of actual time saved based upon your experience using sort of the waterfall approach versus using more of an agile approach? Yeah.
Sure. I think where some of the big time savers are identifying things up front. And then what I mean by that is issues. You do seem to catch issues a lot quicker. You can see your backlog kind of dwindling down, which I think keeps people a little more energized. I think the biggest thing is too many times using a typical waterfall approach, and where this saves time is you get almost to the end and realize you have to kind of start over because something was missed or something wasn't identified. So it takes you a lot longer to run back and kind of go through that whole process again. Whereas if you're doing your sprints, you're always releasing. The other way it helps or can help is how quickly you roll out your initial project. If you're setting your expectations with your customer that they're going to get something right away that's going to be basic, but it's there sooner and they can start using it sooner, and that you're going to continue to work on this in 2-4 week cycles, and they're going to see updates and they're going to see movement, it gets them a little more excited. You start to get those requirements a little easier and quicker. And my previous engagement, not only was I the remedy lead, I was also the ITSM manager. So we actually used a CSI biweekly meeting to generate the requirements for the sprints.
Okay. You mentioned CSI. What is
Continual Service
Improvement? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So we were building process, and we were actually tracking the process tasks because the remedy team was kind of doing double duty there. We were developing process and developing the system. So we could put the tasks from two different epics, one to build the process and one to build the application to meet the process, and have the tasks in there and have those assigned out to different people and have them working in conjunction. We actually would have up to 3 or 4 processes in the pipeline at one time. And we're not talking incident change. We're actually getting a little further down in the weeds, onboarding of personnel, out processing of personnel, requesting servers, where you're starting to get in, they were actually starting to feed requirements for service request management.
Okay. One question that I have is, it seems like at least there's not as much customization work now with Remedy. In the old days, it was more of a toolkit, and then you could write a lot of code. Okay. Right. Now that's not necessarily the case, but do you still need to keep track of all your customizations then, or maybe not your customizations, but your configurations then? And is there a code repository, or is that Confluence, or where would you track all that?
The Atlassian has the capability to house code, but obviously Remedy is database. Customizations are done in the database. It's not C# programming, Java programming. Right. The Atlassian suite does have capabilities like source tree to put your source code in, and other applications that you can put your code in there, modify your code, and then move it from dev, test, prod, and use the tool to push that once you set up all the connections to set all of that up for you. With Remedy, what we would actually do is we would do our def files and copy our def files out and attach them to the pieces of work we were doing. So if we had to go back, we could always go back and get that original def file of the workflow that we modified, or the forms, or the fields. And you said something that fundamentally for me, I think is going to start changing. I think I've seen with customers too much upper management is forcing them to use Remedy out of the box, which is fine. But I see more and more people requesting not a brand new build of incident, but customizations to meet their process needs. Like I mentioned earlier, something as simple as adding different types of VIPs can make reporting for a service level target or a contractual requirement much easier.
Okay.
And I'm not promoting the rebuild of incident or change on the BMC platform. I think that kind of defeats the purpose. But those small tweaks to meet the process, I think, are invaluable to some customers.
Yeah. Here's another question that just came in, and it says here, Remedy 9 is brand new, and mm-hmm. therefore, shouldn't Remedy 9 require less time to implement? And if that's the case, is that going to have any overall impact on an Agile development team then? I don't know if that makes any sense.
So, right. Remedy 9 is the latest and greatest, and it has all kinds of new capabilities. One of the things we're going to leverage to meet the time frame we're looking at is to move customizations and to move data. We're going to use the Migrator tool, which is newer since the 7.6, the Delta Data Migrator. And each version since then, that tool has gotten better, which I think actually lends to the idea that you can customize and move those customizations over to new environments with much more success in a shorter time frame. And again, that might be why we start to see some transition over to customizing the out-of-the-box system. And what was the other part of that question?
That was it. That was it. Okay. Yep. This looks like this is the last question right here. It says, can you please speak about the benefits for a fresh install versus add-on type of project? For example, benefits with Agile methodology for fresh install of Remedy 9.1 or adding Smart IT on existing Remedy 8.1.
Sure. When you're looking at an established system that you're doing an upgrade to, simply standing up the new environment, migrating over the customizations, testing to make sure they're not broken, and then migrate over your records, and you're ready to turn your old system off. I may have oversimplified that a little bit, but essentially, that's kind of your high-level look at it. When you're setting up a brand new environment, you're looking at most organizations. That means they're looking to start defining your ITSM processes. How are we going to do change management? How are we going to do incident? How are we going to do problem? How are we going to do service requests or service level management? So what happens is the tool, you come in and you say, come in January 1, and oh yeah, we're coming in with Remedy and we're gonna get this out and running, and you get 6, 7, 8 months into it, and what you find out is people are, well, where's this Remedy you keep talking about? And what's happened is you've spent that entire time not getting the system up and running. You've spent that entire time helping the customer develop process. Whereas if we just got the tool up as quick as possible with the basic foundational information needed, let people start using it, they'll start telling you the requirements that you need to build. They'll start helping you with the process. I've so many times I've walked in and especially processes that span across multiple teams, you'll walk in and each team has a different thought on how that process and what's happening on the other side of the fence from them.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to get that all nailed down. But you could implement that process based on what everyone tells you, and then as they find the pain points in that process going forward, then you quickly modify and adjust.
Right. I think that's key, because oftentimes we'll hear stories from customers where, let's say, just take the example of change management. So somebody came in, listened to their requirements, discussed their problems, and then came back and did a change implementation. Then the users start using the system, and they find, hey, wait a minute, this is slow, it's cumbersome, it's difficult to use, I like the old way. And then they'll stop using it altogether. And that's the worst thing that can happen. And so certainly this Agile approach will prevent that. So it's really a win-win then.
And that's a perfect example of things like patches.
Yeah.
You implement this policy-based or processes based on the initial requirements, and people are like, well, I just need to run a patch against Office. It takes me more time to run through the change process than it does to deploy the patch for our company.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. Then people don't want to use it.
Right. So this is something that I think is coming, whether you guys like it or not. We're going to see companies moving to DevOps and certainly a more agile way of doing things.